All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December 2023 Argo CD and Rollouts Community Meeting. I'm your host for today, Jesse Soon, a maintainer of the Argo project. If you haven't already, please go ahead and add yourself to the attendee list. And a reminder that the Argo project does adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be courteous and respectful during this meeting. A reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. All right, so today our agenda is we have Nick, who will be covering some of a release overview of what's new in Argo CD 2.9. And finally, if you do have any agenda items or issues, discussion topics you'd like to add, please feel free to comment on the Google Doc. All right, Nick.
Thanks, Jesse. So hello, everybody. I'm Nicholas Mori. I'm a developer advocate at Acuity. If you haven't already seen the YouTube video that we did on what's new in version 2.9, this is essentially going to be a rehash of that. Let me go and get my screen shared here. Everybody should be staring at Argo CD. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, let me get lined up. And just bear with me while I mess with Zoom to make this work. Yeah, we'll call that good. All right. All of the examples that I'm going to be going through are available in this repository. If I can find the Zoom chat wherever it threw that, I can throw it in there. But essentially, there were three main features. There's a whole slew of bug fixes and features and dock improvements and everything included in this release. But I'm going to be covering, at least in my opinion, what were the top three features that were added. And in reverse order, there is the dynamic rebalancing of clusters across application controller shards. There's the ability to ignore differences in application sets, similarly to how you can ignore them in applications. And then there is now support for doing inline customization patches in the application manifest. So I'm going to start with this feature. And let me chat. Paste. There we go. All right, I've thrown the link to this repository in the chat here. As you're probably already familiar with Customize, it provides the ability to take a base set of manifests and apply patches or overlays to them. If we go up in the repository here, so an example customization file would look like this, where I'll uncomment it so that we can actually see what this looks like. And the keyboard shortcut does not work on Linux. There we go. All right. So you have your customization file. You've got some resources that you're pulling from an external base, or frankly, it could be local. And then you've got a patch that you're applying to one of the resources generated by those manifests. In this example, we're taking the guestbook UI and we're patching the container port to use 443 instead of the default 80. So that's what it looks like in customization. What you can now do in Argo CD is do that exact same patch, but in the application manifest. So this is kind of similar to defining your Helm values directly in the application manifest, and that you can source your customization from anywhere and then apply the patches, the changes that you want to make to those to resources generated by that source in the application without having to then maintain a separate customization.yaml in your own GitOps repository and then point the application to that. You can do it directly in your application manifest. So if we go into Argo CD here and look at an example of this, actually, I think I may have broken it. I can't unmarshal my application set, but you can basically see that it's going to replace the container port. You can do the equivalent of the customization in the application manifest. Where I think this gets really cool is that you can do this also with application sets. And I think that's where the real advantage comes in here, is that if we take an example like external DNS, where for every cluster that we deploy external DNS to, we have to update the TXT owner ID of on the external DNS deployment that comes from the customization the in the source repository from external DNS's customization base. So by combining the inline customization patch with the application set generator, I can use the name from the cluster generator in my customization patch to dynamically set the name of the cluster for every application that the application set is generating an external DNS application for. So this gives you like a wide range of different possibilities for I'm getting this information from my generator, and I want to dynamically patch the resources that I'm getting from my source. So this means like I no longer have to maintain a customization for every cluster that I'm going to be deploying external DNS to. I can now do it dynamically with my application set. I'm just going to check the chat here. Can you do customization patches in line with applications with Helm, similar to Helm post render, or not quite yet? Great question. That was one of the first questions we got on the YouTube video as well. And the short answer is no, because you can't, in an Argo CD application, supply both customization, customize and Helm as the like source type. So the workaround to that would be to maintain a customization that pulls in that Helm chart. So use customize plus Helm, and then you can use the customized patch in the application set. There was, I think I've got an issue in that kind of talks about this, in that we probably want to long term be able to apply a customization patch to any source. So it could be, instead of this being a customized specific setting, this may, if the proposal goes through, we can bring the patches up 1 degree to be able to customize any source. But as it stands right now, you can only use it if the source that you're pulling in is customization, or is a customize. So that's it for the support for inline customization patches. Next up is the ability to ignore differences in application sets. So let me go pull up the let me pull up. All right, so we've got our example application set, and maybe might help if I zoom in a bit. So we've got our example application set here that deploys guestbooks to 3 different environments. And the idea here is that like application sets are a powerful feature for rendering applications dynamically based on generators. However, there are going to be situations where another process might revise certain fields of an application after the application set has created it, or maybe not even a different process, but a human might want to go in and deviate the state of that application from what the application set has generated. So a common example is possibly when using Argo CD image updater with applications managed by an application set. When using the imperative write back method, the image updater changes the image tag using Argo CD app set, and then the parameter, which, if not ignored, would be overwritten by the application set. Or, I think a more simple example is that you want to use the application sets to generate the apps, but you want to allow users in certain scenarios to modify the applications generated by it. So in the example that I've got here, there's 2 scenarios where we're allowing users to go and make changes to the applications. The first is in on the guestbook dev, the application named guestbook dev that gets generated by this application set. We're going to allow the end user to go and change the sync policy as they desire. So if we take a look at what that looks like in Argo CD here, I can go in and I can disable the auto sync on guestbook dev. However, I can not do the same for guestbook prod, which means that if I go and disable this, if everything's working correctly, it automatically re-enables the automated sync policy. So we're effectively saying that in production, we're enforcing that the sync policy has to be what's set by the application set. But in dev, we're giving the flexibility to the end users to go and modify the sync policy as they desire, because maybe they want to pause it for a little bit, delete a deployment, see how that affects their application, or they want to modify the image tag manually to try it. And then they can always go and re-enable the sync policy to bring it back to the desired state in Git. So it's a bit of an anti-pattern, but I think like when we think about the reality of like you have a dev environment and you don't care if that's always perfectly in sync with your desired state because it's a live testing environment, I think it's really useful. The other example here is that we're allowing on any application generated by this application set to change the target revision. So, this could be an example where you just let people go and set what version their application is tracking manually. Not best practice long term, but for people getting started with Argo CD, it could be a convenient flexibility for their developers. And any questions on that one? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. And last up is the ability to dynamically rebalance clusters across application controller shards. So if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay. This is kind of advanced functionality. Once you get into actually scaling Argo CD, you start splitting out the application controller into multiple shards. So this happens when the application controller becomes overloaded, managing multiple remote clusters with many resources. The solution is that you split it into multiple shards. The caveat here is that each shard can be responsible for multiple clusters, but one cluster can only belong to one shard at a time. And so previously, the application controller was a stateful set, and every time you increase the number of controllers for it, you would have to, or the number of replicas or number of shards, you'd have to update an environment variable on that stateful set, which forced a restart of all the application controller pods. As of 2.9, there's an alpha feature that allows you to update the application controller to be a deployment instead of a stateful set. And what this means is that the replicas field is now used to determine the shard count, no longer that environment variable. And when replicas are added and removed, the sharding algorithm is rerun to ensure that the clusters are properly distributed according to that algorithm. So to actually implement this in with Argo CD, I've got my a customize file that is pulling in the install manifests, deploying a namespace, and patching the service. And then I'm taking advantage of customized components, which allows me to point to another customization that contains the patch for, I'm in the wrong folder. This one contains the patch for the stateful set, which scales it down to 0 replicas and sets the environment variable, although I don't think that's totally necessary if we've scaled down the pods. And B, adds the new application controller deployment resource with 2 replicas. Now, it's important to note that to enable this functionality, you have to use this environment variable and set it to true. Although I have an open issue about that. If Ashida's here, it's not working for me. It actually breaks if I set this to true, but the intention is to hide this behind a feature flag, hide the dynamic cluster distribution behind a feature flag. And so if we go and look in Argo CD here, we can see, let's group everything. Let's zoom way in. We can see that my application controller stateful set has 0 replicas, and my application controller deployment has 2 healthy pods. Now, This explains how we convert from a stateful set to a deployment. But what's important here is that now that it's a deployment, the application controller actually relies on a config map to track the mapping of replica, like the application controller pod, to the shard number, and each shard maintains a health beat, a heartbeat for each shard in that config map. So if that config map does not exist, it'll automatically get created. And then in the repo here, I've got an example of what that'll look like. So it'll maintain a config map that looks like this, where you've got the shard number, you've got the controller name, which is the application controller pod name, and then you've got the last time that the application controller checked in. And so this heartbeat is updated every time the readiness probe is called on the application controller pod, which is 10 seconds by default. So most importantly, this functionality doesn't benefit the users of the default hash-based sharding algorithm as much because the clusters will remain roughly balanced across shards. However, for users of the round robin or other custom algorithms, a static assignment of the clusters to application controller shards can lead to unbalanced shards where when replicas are added or removed. So the dynamic shard rebalancing functionality benefits users of these custom shard assignment strategies the most. And that's it for that. I'm going to go back and check the chat here. Good question, Christian. I'll have to check for the dynamic rebalance. How often does it rebalance, and does the new pod wait until it builds the cache before spinning down the old one? Do they fight for a short time while two own it? Good question. For the start of that, it rebalances when replicas are added or removed from the application controller deployment. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody that, I don't know if Ashita's here, but if anybody worked on this, I don't think it'll rebalance outside of a scaling event on the application controller deployment. Does it wait to spin down? The default policy for spinning up new pods is probably going to be create the new one before destroying the old one. So I imagine that's a good question. I don't know if we have a maintainer that.
if it's
Go ahead.
just since you're replacing a stateful set with a deployment, and then if you were to just apply these manifests, I think the new deployment will come up at the same time. And then you might have double processing of double reconciliations of applications during the time that they're both alive, if the stateful set is also handling the same apps.
And can I just add a little bit? So I think they won't actually do it at the same time, but you might have for a few seconds no pods handling a shard. So the idea that we just use Kubernetes, the same approach that leader election uses. So we have a config map, and then in that config map, only one pod apply its own name next to shard. And so basically the old shard, while it's being shut down, it still owns the shard. And then once the old pod is gone completely, it still owns it for a few seconds, kind of. And then once the lease on this shard expires, the new pod will pick it up. So during rebalancing, shard is not being processed for, I don't know, for a few seconds, but never two pods are handling the same shard. That's it. And rebalancing is not happening unless something changed. Yeah. Unless number of replicas changed.
Oh, thanks. I misinterpreted the question.
I hope I maybe.
No, I think you got. Yeah, you had. I think you answered the right question. I thought he was asking about during the conversion.
I see.
And that is for the it for the demo that I've got prepared today. But I'm happy to poke around if anybody has specific questions about the other features as well.
There was another question on the ignore differences. Does it fix the following bug? And the bug is sync is not working with ignore differences and respect ignore differences true.
Yeah, so just to give you more context on this is a bug that's been reported, I think, back in October 2022, and it hasn't been fixed yet. There's a patch that's in progress, but hasn't been worked on for 3 months. And the problem is that even with respect ignore differences true, sometimes the algorithm improperly recognizes differences to arrays. So, for example, there's an array of containers. There's a change, for example, in the environment configuration for containers. Argo C doesn't properly recognize differences. So and that can lead to a variety of issues. And you can see that people are reporting this is still affecting them. So I wanted to ask if the work on the application sets in particular is in any way related to this. If you guys are aware of this bug, is it on your radar essentially? It will be the question.
I don't think that it'll help with this issue because it was an app set improvement. I think what I know about the ignore differences on the application object is I do know that there's like some inconsistencies or with the JSON path versus the JQ path ignore differences. So this, and I think JQ might be the one that has more like surprising behavior.
Okay.
So I guess if you are bitten by this bug, one interesting data point might be to try it with JSON path if it's possible. But I know that with arrays, JQ expressions are better than JSON path. So it might not help.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah. I just wanted to maybe ask a more general question that I think is more also helpful to everyone on the call, which is let's say that someone from the community who's not maybe actively involved in Argo yet would like to help with this, like with this bug, we could potentially contribute to it. What would be the best way to coordinate with the rest of the community to signal, hey, we want to work on this bug or help with it? Is the Slack the best way, the standard way where the community communicates, or is there a different place? Is the GitHub issue the right place to discuss things? What are the customs here of the community?
Oh, if you wanted to work on the bug directly, like that's probably the fastest way. So if it's a bug and like we don't need too much discussion to have someone fix the bug.
Got it.
If it's like a new big feature of it, that's when you want to circulate the idea with the maintainers, and we have the Thursday meetings. That is the best thing. And in this meeting itself is also open for any discussion as well. So for bugs, like nothing should. We want to get those fixed as soon as possible.
All right, cool. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Nick. And I did see another thing pop up on the agenda, and let me share. Actually, this one will be. It looks like it'll be quick. So we have this issue, and the question is, I think Alex must have. Oh no! Okay, this one got merged into in main, and then it's basically a bug I would consider. And the question is, can we get this in 2.9? Yeah, I don't see any reason why this can't be cherry picked back. So
yeah, the push is because for us it crashes our clusters if we don't have this fix, and so it's a scalability problem for Argo to be at any company with a large Argo instance in a cluster.
Absolutely. Do you happen to know if this regressed or was it like this from day?
Our company went really heavy into application sets, and we've been really scaling up Argo. So we noticed it and found the cause. And so we don't think it's a regression. It's been there since I think 2.7 at the earliest. It was a really simple fix.
Yeah.
So it should be, and we've been running the fix fort in our environments for a couple months now.
Oh, okay.
And we currently are using it in 2.8.6 as a fork.
I think we should. I wanted to double check on this in the contributor experience meeting tomorrow, but I think we actually should probably cherry pick that bug and a few other bugs into 2.8 and 2.7 since they're currently supported. But I thought we'd review bug cherry picking policy in the contributor experience meeting, but
The tag as a candidate for going back to it, so it gets don't lose track of this one.
cool, thank you.
I guess kind of on that topic too, as a contributor, I was trying to self-service this answer of what does and doesn't get cherry picked, and I was wondering in that checklist or any of the guides that are included there, is there something that I missed to be able to kind of self-service when and where things get cherry picked and how we encourage things to get cherry picked?
Not
Because they
aware.
get
I think it's
moved-
more advocacy, if
Okay.
anything, than
Because
usually
for
some
me,
issues are more important for some companies. I mean, some companies are like, oh, this is affecting our internal users, and so it's important for us. It's really more about like advocacy.
so I guess my suggestion there is when it gets merged to master, I think on my end, I wasn't sure what comes next or when that might get released. So I think making this contribution checklist and kind of linking to users of what that release cycle might look like for a change that does get merged might be fruitful.
That's a good idea. So maybe one improvement that could be done as part of the checklist is I don't see anything that asks like, should this be cherry picked to older releases or like maybe like a mentioning of what.
Yeah, and if it's not, what does it mean that it was merged to master? Does that mean that it gets released in the next minor release? Basically, what does that timeline look like for that contributor's?
Oh, if it only gets
merged
merged
item?
into master?
Yeah.
If it only gets merged into master, then depending how close you are to the cutoff of when like we branched, it will just be in the next release. So if 2.10, right? Like basically what happened with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we don't have any other topics. If there are any more, please speak now. Otherwise, thanks everyone for joining the meeting. And there's a chance, I think we might still try and get an in-person meeting happening next month. We tried to do it today actually, but I think it kind of came late. The announcement came late after KubeCon. We didn't get many signups, and then probably maybe it's close to the holidays, but we'll try again perhaps in January. So look out for some announcements for an on-site evening Argo CD and Rollouts community meeting. Actually, and also include workflows. All right. Thanks everyone again. And we'll see you again.
Just one more remark before we leave. So I was checking that as Ashita was not online, and this is related to the questions about rebalancing and the impacts that it may have on performances as well. So I put that on the chat, and basically the current implementation uses the already activated distribution algorithm. So depending on the activated algorithm, it may introduce some moves on the cluster to shard association, and so it can introduce some performance rootback as well. So we are working on another algorithm based on the consistent hashing with bounded loads specification to reduce this reshuffling or this rebalancing impacts when the number of replicas increase.
Okay, thanks for the update. Yeah, the answer is also in the Zoom chat. So if you want to read that in afterwards in the Zoom chat, the explanation is there.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.
See you.
Thanks. See you.
Thank you.